This next collection of books is going to take me quite a long time to get through. And of course, I am talking about Diary of Roald the Adventurer. Who is Roald? I don't know, but I do recall picking these up during my travels. But as you can see, there are 11 volumes, so we could be here for a while. Well, we commence. Volume 1, Sal Terre. Is this locations where they're found? Yes, okay, cool. And we seem to have migrated to Liyue. I did not even realize. Okay, guys, we're no longer in Mondstadt, we're now in Liyue. My shoes are completely waterlogged after trekking here from the banks of Dihua Marsh. The last time I took them off to pour the water out, a frog jumped out. I find that logistically impossible, but you do you, man. From the scale of this ruin, I suspect it is the temple that provided safe refuge for civilians during the Archon War several millennia ago. And can I just say, this is what Alice's Teyvat guide should have been? This is much more useful. I've heard that the Gold of Salt, I remember you, don't remember your name, but I remember you, built such a place. Liyue folklore holds that she was the gentlest of the gods. In the brutality and chaos of wartime, human beings were puny and disposable. But the Salt God refused to join the other gods in their senseless battle for dominance, instead choosing to give shelter to those dispossessed by the war. She brought them here to build a new settlement. She showed them kindness and comfort. And even as global upheaval ushered in the end of an epoch, she worked tirelessly to bring about a return to peace between the gods. It seems that most parts of the ancient city have sunk into the riverbed of Bishui River. It's fortunate that the foundation of the temple is still here after all this time. She amassed a group, it's interesting how he's not naming her either. She amassed a group of followers who settled in the area now known as Sal Terre and lived a humble existence. The city stood for several centuries, finally falling with the downfall of the god herself. Also interesting that Sal Terre is not even remotely Chinese, yet all the other names in Liyue are remotely Chinese. It's interesting. Have I noted that before? Probably. The gentlest of the gods fell not in battle at the hand of the other gods. She fell at the hand of one of her own people, the people she had loved so dearly. He was the first king of the people, and also the last. He had once loved the god of salt, just as the rest did, but as a mere mortal, he ultimately could not fathom the self-sacrificial love the god embodied. He sought after military might, in the hope that the city might be able to hold its own in defense and attack. And so, to demonstrate that gentleness was a virtue unfit for the times, he took a sword and ended the life of the lone, defenseless god. Oh my god, what is wrong with this man? That's how he chose to prove a point? Jesus, I hope someone shanked him afterwards. No sooner had she met her demise than the temple itself collapsed, and the people's city crumbled like salt into the earth. Deserved. As for the treacherous king's fate, theories abound but none are certain. Drat. Some say he continued to reign in solitude from the ruins for centuries, finally turning to dust long after the cries of war had subsided. The ruins had been engulfed by the river, and insects had hollowed out his scepter. Others say, love the grammar, that he took his own life after taking that of the god, unable to bear the guilt of deicide. I've actually never heard that before, but okay, yeah, deicide, that weighed upon his conscience. In any case, the people on whom the salt god had once looked so fondly became scattered across Liyue. In the safe haven of Liyue Harbour, under the rule of the Geo Archon, they and their stories survived, and that is why we still hear about them to this day. Rumours say that the salt god's body can still be found somewhere in the depths of the ruins. Though her body has turned to salt, it still maintains her posture from the moment she was struck by the king's sword. It looks like we're in for some heavy rain. Dark clouds gathering as far as the eye can see. I'd better get moving. I'm going to head northwest to Mount Jingsa. Hopefully I can make it there before the rain gets too heavy. And hopefully it's not such a mad dash that I lose my diary en route. Yeah, about that, Roald. You lose every one of them. I don't, like I said, Genshin goes through one ear and out the other. I don't remember what we discussed about the Salt God. I believe that was Dunglee's story quest. First or second? First. I believe it was his first story quest. But I genuinely don't remember what we discussed about it. I know we went to a ruin that had to do with it, so I'm going to assume it's this original city in Sal Terre, but I don't remember too much. So I'm going to have to put that put a pin in it and remember to revisit that later so I can remember what the Salt God was all about. But we move on nonetheless to Volume 2, Chingsa Village. Leaving Dragonspine, I waded through rivers, walked across shoals carpeted with silver grass, and made my way through sun-dappled bamboo forests before finally arriving at Mount Chingsa. My shoes and clothes were all soaked from the heavy rain. Luckily, the elders in the village were kind enough to let me hang my clothes in the assembly hall. Ooh la la, your underwear's in the assembly hall where everyone can see it? They even prepared dry clothes and some food for me. There were many children in Chingsa village. Sweet as they may be, they can become quite clingy. There were also many elders here. People living here seemed happy and carefree. The elders said that most of the young people had gone to work in Liwa Harbour. Many of them already had a family there, and they would send money back every month. Having seen the prosperity and convenience of the city, it's hard for these young people to go back to the rural life here, and I don't blame them. Liwa Harbour has brought peace and prosperity to Chingsa village for the time being, but eventually it will also be the cause of its demise. Yeah, because the population's going to die out because everybody's migrating to the city. Legend has it that the word Chingsa originated from the name of an ancient monster, Ti. Ti, of course, is what we call it now in the contemporary language. But in ancient times, the people of Liwa pronounced it as Chingsa. An elder said that thousands of years ago, Morax defeated the sea serpent and brought peace back to Liwa. After Chi died, its body turned to stone, its blood became water, and its scales are now the terraced fields. The monster's nest became what we now call Mount Chingsa. But after a quick look, I believe the mountains consist of mostly rocks scattered by impacts from the outside. No traces of a hydro monster can be found on the rocks. Perhaps the corpse of Chi is long gone, and this monster turning into a mountain thing is nothing but an ancient tale. My next destination is a lake located amongst the stone peaks of Duyankast. It is said that there is a labyrinth where the Adepti live. Let's see if I can find them. I'm sorry, a labyrinth? I don't have any recollection of a labyrinth where the Adepti live, because that would have been super cool, but I have no recollection of this. Volume 3, Altiang Lake, Duyankast. I seem to have lost yet another diary. I don't understand. I even made sure to say to myself 3 times, whatever you do, don't lose your diary. The fact that you need to say that to yourself 3 times is concerning. Are you suffering from dementia or something at an early age, sir? You're having problems. Actually, why do I say an early age? I do not know the age of Roald. But then I got caught up in my adventure and it went straight out of my head. Oh, he has ADHD. Okay. I waste so much paper every year. I do hope the Dendro Archon won't mind. Yeah, she has bigger things in her mind at this point in time, but hey, good on you for thinking about her. I have arrived at a mountain lake located high on Mount Altiang. To get here, Altiang, I always get stuck on that C. To get here, I had to hike up a winding dirt trail, make my way across perilous wooden walkways built by herb gatherers in ancient times. Yeah, they're still functional. And then scale a steep, wet cliff. Wow, that's dedication. I was told by some fishermen that the lake is 1,000 furlongs deep, but after taking a dip in the water, I can safely say that their statements were pure hyperbole. The Chingsa village elders were right after all. The mountain lake's water is sweet and warm. This place certainly lives up to its reputation as a celestial paradise. Back when I had just arrived in Duyankast, an old farmer told me that the Adepti possess a mysterious magical ability that lets them turn into mist and roam in the sea of clouds. I dismissed it as an old wives' tale at the time, but seeing the way the mist over the lake rises up to the summit and merges together with the sea of clouds, it does make me wonder. The Adeptus I've been searching for could be roaming the clouds at the summit right now, for all I know, and I would be completely oblivious to it. I headed east down Mount Altiang and ended up thoroughly lost in a thick forest. Finally, I came to a clearing and discovered I was back at the banks of the Bishwe River. I have an excellent view of the surrounding area here, so I think this is where I'll camp for the night. While I was sorting through my things at the camp, I met a young lady who looked like she was out on a treasure hunt. She was called Eduardo. Why is a female called Eduardo? And she explained that she was heading west to look for a miraculous lake at the foot of Mount Altiang. Legends tell of an Adeptus who lives beside a lake at the foot of Mount Altiang on the northern side. If that's true, then that's sure to be where the Adeptus keeps their secret treasure too. Mwahaha! I know exactly what I'll do when I get my hands on that treasure. How about you find it first before you start spending it? And she quickly changed her tune, as if suddenly realizing how she sounded. You mean how deranged she sounds? Good for her. I'd contact the guild and report to them if I found it. I'm a proud member of the Adventurers Guild, and I have absolutely no connection to the treasure hoarders. Ha ha ha! Methinks the lady doth protest too much. Indeed, some adventurers are in the business for material wealth alone. I'm reminded of that classic Lewis saying, "To each their unfathomable own." But whatever her motivations, she is a fellow adventurer nonetheless, and a genuine one at that. I must say, I was tempted to head west in search of this fabled miraculous lake myself after hearing Eduardo talk about it. But in the end, I decided to stick with my existing plan. Barring any unforeseen circumstances, I will proceed to the Gwilly Plains to see what sights and treasures are waiting to be discovered there. And hopefully I won't lose my diary again this time. Again, barring any unforeseen circumstances. I can't lose another one. May any unforeseen circumstances be well and truly barred. Yeah, I hate to break it to you, Roald, but that didn't work for you. Volume 4, Luhua Pool. Travelling southeast along the Bishui River, I came across a pond at the foot of Mount Tianheng on the north side. The water is clearer than the sky, and the water temperature is similar to a human's body temperature. The water has a sweet aftertaste. A local herb gatherer told me that thousands of years ago, this pond was once a garden. It is said that during the era of the Archon War, two lovers, whose family disapproved of their relationship, made this place their rendezvous. However, the times were merciless, and the man left his lover to follow the Geo Archon. He plunged himself bravely into the conflict as a mortal among gods. And like so many mortals in those dark days, none heard from him again for centuries. The girl wandered the garden, awaiting the return of her lover. The flowers withered, and grass grew in their place. Soaked in a flood, the grass rotted. And when the flood too had subsided, and to dust she had returned, her tears then converged into this pond. Perhaps it was her deep longing that made the water here so clear and gentle. I spent an afternoon here and nodded off while taking a bath in the pond. That's super dangerous. When I woke up, the stars were already glittering in the night sky. I noticed a baby fox slinking around me, but it got scared and ran away when I looked up. Not until later did I realize that one of my shoes was missing and my bag of provisions had been ransacked. Oh, I hope the fox left you with something. It took longer than I expected to pack my luggage. My next destination is the delta of the Bishui River in the northeast, Yaoguang Shoal. Still not halfway there, but we will persist. Volume 5, Yaoguang Shoal. This is the delta of the Bishui River, where the sand and mud carried by the river has accumulated into an open and flat shoal. When I finally arrived, the shoal was shrouded in a blanket of fog, and my new shoes were soaked again. You were having not much luck with your shoes and your journals. I heard the sound of some unknown monsters coming from the fog, but couldn't quite tell their exact location. All that was left to do was set up the tent and wait for this blasted fog to drift away. When I was staying at the Wangshu Inn, a merchant told me about the legends of Yaoguang Shoal. It started with a poem. Jade-lusted waves washed into the ocean while a conch lay empty on the white shoal. The meaning of the poem is that the sunlight, pure as jade, glimmers on the surface of the Bishui River and seems to flow into the sea along with the river water. But the Green Conch Lodge on the Yaoguang Shoal has been unoccupied for some time. Green Conch Lodge. I am unfamiliar with this place. I once ventured into the fog to visit the seashell sanctuary, whatever that is, but didn't see the owner. A legend among fishermen has it that the Green Conch Lodge was the home of an adeptus, the green conch itself, in fact, constituting part of her very being. She's part crab. She provided shelter for travellers who were lost in the fog, took care of the shipwreck survivors, and bid Godspeed to other adepti on crusades against sea monsters. But older fishermen interpret the legend differently. They said that the seashell sanctuary was not the abode of an adeptus, but of a family that had lived in the giant seashell for generations. They devoted themselves to helping the lost and saved many fishermen's lives. It seems the fog is drifting away and the sun is almost visible now. Next up, I'll borrow a boat to get to Gugun Stone Forest and visit the ruins where the Geo Archon vanquished the sea monster. I should arrive in no time at all if the weather is good. Well, the question is, was the weather good for you, sir? Volume 6. Gugun Stone Forest. We skirted past a few small islands occupied by hilichurls, managing to steer clear of their line of sight, and made it to Gugun Stone Forest successfully. Well, my question is, can hilichurls swim? Otherwise, you're fine. 6 giant stone pillars kept the sun out of my eyes as I went ashore, and it was remarkably cool in their shade. The crabs on the beach were big and meaty. Maybe it's because the area has been nourished by the remains of a magical beast for millennia. Anyway, they tasted great roasted. The sheer beauty of this place makes it hard to imagine that it was once the site of a bloody battle between the Geo-Archon and the sea monster. Suffice to say, the blood once shed here has long since vanished into the sea without a trace. I suppose that everything pales into insignificance when faced with the scale of the sea, whether it's a single drop of an ordinary person's blood or rivers of blood shed collectively by the heroes of the past. The relentless flowing of the winds and waves are destined to wash every last trace of it away. In the end, everything will just be as it has always been, since time immemorial. Oh, Roald likes to get super poetic, and I'm here for it. Legend has it that the Geo-Archon once carved a giant polearm out of the rocky land. He plunged it deep into the ocean, riding it straight through the body of the demon that wrought chaos upon his domain. Over the years, the wind gradually eroded the stone polearm into the form we see today. Later, I'll return to the mainland to camp out for the night. Oh, you're not camping here? What about the tasty crabs? From where I am, I can see the ships leaving the harbour in the distance. As I write, the Crux is setting sail once more, embarking on its next grand voyage. I wonder what mission the Teaching Commerce Guild has entrusted to legendary Captain Beto this time. This is interesting. This insinuates that Roald is not too far ahead of the traveller in leaving his diaries behind. If we're talking about the Crux and Beto, it can be pretty recent. I had the most awful night's sleep last night. I dreamt I was somewhere pitch black and damp. Suddenly, I was a sea monster, and my impaled body was being driven into the ocean floor by the Geo-Archon's polearm. I writhed around and clutched at the giant polearm made of rock, trying desperately to free myself, but it was wedged firmly into place. Each movement I made filled me with agony and with rage. Note to self, Genshin Forest is not a good place to spend the night. I thought you just said you weren't. You were going to go to the mainland. Bro, you're contradicting yourself. Anywho, Genshin Forest is not a good place to spend the night. I woke early, so I lit the campfire and I'll move out once the sky's bright. My next stop is Liyue Harbour. I just need to be somewhere that I can get my clothes washed, beard trimmed, that sort of thing. Once I've sorted myself out, I'm making another trip to Duancast. I didn't make any progress in finding the Adepti last time. This time, I think I'll try my luck at Tingun Peak. Another note to self, do not lose my diary again. I have bad news for you, Roald. Super bad news. Volume 7, Tingun Peak, Duancast. I shall preface my adventurer's diary with a stern reminder to myself. Recently, I keep discovering that I've misplaced my diary every time I feel like I want to write in it. Oh, Roald, you must learn to be more careful in future. After climbing for what feels like an eternity, I have finally reached the top of the precipice. I'm surrounded by a sea of clouds. It's impossible to know where in the midst of that sea of clouds I once stood, looking up at this celestial place where the Adepti dwell. Apart from the few oddly shaped trees, there are barely any signs of life here at the top of the precipice. Occasionally, a lapis glade will let out a high-pitched cry before diving down into the clouds and disappearing from view. Up the hill from here is the Adeptus' dwelling, but there's a few things I need to sort out before I head up. The most pressing issue is repairing my climbing gear. I'll also tend to a few cuts and grazes while I'm at it. A kind farmer gave me some ointment when I first arrived in Duancast. It stings, but it really does work. Nights atop the precipice offer little in the way of comfort. The relentless wind above the clouds pierces to the bone. It's difficult to shelter oneself from it, because it finds its way to you through all the tiny gaps in the tent, and there's no way you could keep a campfire alight in this wind. A good night's sleep is therefore out of the question. I wonder if the Adeptus who dwells at the summit ever gets lonely and dispirited, being surrounded by nothing but the cold, heartless wind. At the end of a long and sleepless night, I finally watch the moon set into the sea of clouds. I'll make sure my pack is securely fastened, then at daybreak, I'll begin my journey to the summit where the Adeptus dwells. Hopefully, the altitude is high enough that it won't rain. I hope it didn't rain because you're not gonna tell me. Volume 8, Tingxiu. To stop me from losing my diary yet again, this time I've put a marker made of moss on the leather case. Now it really stands out in my backpack. It's perfect! Tonight I'll put it beside my pillow before I go to sleep. There's no way I could lose it then. Honestly, I don't think I can keep calling myself an adventurer if I lose my diary one more time. A misadventurer, perhaps. I headed westward from the mountain pass at Mount Tianheng and came to a ruin, known locally as Tingxiu. The entrance to the ruin is located right in the center of a giant rocky outcrop, rising up from the center of a shallow pool. It is surrounded on all sides by steep cliff faces. There are several stone towers which blend in seamlessly with the natural scenery put here by the Geo-Archon. I think you give the Geo-Archon a little too much credit. The morning mist is beginning to clear, and the first rays of sunlight are starting to illuminate the mountains and ruins. It looks like it'll be good weather today. Legends say that these ruins predate the Geo-Archon's rule over Liyue, yet, case in point. The whole of Lisha was covered by water at the time of the Archon War. What? Really? Damn. And back then, this rocky outcrop was nothing more than a little islet that rose above the water's surface. That is a lot of water recession. Holy hell. After peace was restored, the region of Lisha unfurled once more as the tides withdrew, revealing the ancient buildings erected by the early peoples. Back when I was at the Wangshu Inn, I met a scholar from Sumeria called Soraya. Hey, it's Soraya! A super early mention. She had done a fair bit of research on the ruins of Lisha. Wait, Soraya, do we meet her in Mondstadt? I remember the name, but I do not remember her. Once she got talking about it, she could talk all day. What she told me was that these ruins were left behind by an evil god, whose name has been wiped from the record, and its people. But in the end, the sea gave way to forests and fields, the self-serving god was defeated, and the strongholds and temples of the ancient city the god's people once built were left to crumble. That is how Qingsu Pool came to be. The ruins were submerged until the long Archon War finally came to an end, emerging on the landscape as the tide subsided. Maybe these crumbling remains have been left as a nostalgic reminder of a bygone era for the Adepti and the other deities. In any case, this is a calm and tranquil place that has, for whatever reason, remained entirely unperturbed by the relentless development of Liyue Harbour and untouched by the mining operation based in the chasm. It has just been left, as is, right to this day. Perversely, the only disturbances have come since the mining at the chasm has been halted, as monsters have now occupied the ruins here. Let's just hope they don't destroy anything. It is a simple theory, but I need to gather more evidence. I should keep heading north and visit the ruins at Lingdu Pass in Dunyu. I ran into Eduardo again just before I set off. What are the odds of that? She seemed to be travelling with a partner this time. She must have a busy adventurous schedule. It seemed like I blinked and then she disappeared off into the ruins. Maybe she was never there to begin with. Volume 9. Oh, we return to Dragonspine. Actually, I'm getting the feeling that these diaries are not chronological because he's like, I'm going to go after the Adeptus, and then the next thing we're in a completely different part of Liyue. So I don't think that these are chronological, despite being numbered thusly. And considering he said he was finished with Dragonspine back in Volume 2, so this is odd. Anywho, Volume 9, Dragonspine. I began my ascent of Dragonspine from its southern side. Oh, really? We approached from the north, but I suppose you came from Liyue, we came from Mondstadt. Where the mountain meets the riverbanks and plains of Liyue. The mountain slopes gently here, the wind is soft, and the snow is light. Added to the unfrozen water sources, it makes this place a good choice for setting up a base camp. Once I've prepared my supplies, I will make a camp here before continuing my climb to the summit. After setting up camp, I took the chance to survey the surrounding ruins. What intrigued me is that the architectural style and artistic patterns are strikingly similar to those seen in ancient buildings elsewhere. This could very well mean that the fabled mountain civilization of old is right beneath my feet. Unfortunately, I did not find any well-preserved inscriptions within the ruins, so there was no hard proof of the ancient civilization's historicity? Never heard that word before. Perhaps I will find more information is preserved further up the mountain, buried deep within the bitingly cold blizzards. Good theory. I don't know if the answer is yes, but good theory. Spending the night here is an unpleasant experience. The cold, damp wind chills to the bone, and the way it shakes the tent sounds like the roar of a rushing river. Guaranteed nightmare material for you once you do manage to fall asleep. There's a cave by the water, and it must be spacious in there because I can hear the ghostly groaning of the wind echoing inside. Unfortunately, the entrance is tightly fenced off, and there is simply no way to get through from the outside. Weird. I will start advancing further up the mountain a little later on. There are some remnants of the relatively recent past by the path, which, if I'm not mistaken, can be traced back to the era when Mondstadt was ruled by an aristocracy. I dug up some fragments of clothing and some irreparably damaged weaponry. The dense snow and ice seem to have slowed down the decomposition process, preserving any pieces of the past that they swallow up for a long time to come. The way that the items are distributed leads me to believe that a chase once took place here on this mountain path. Or possibly even a murder. Do tell me more. I want to hear more about the murder. It seems that even fierce blizzards and sinister mutations pose no obstacle to humans intent on following through on their dark ambitions. In the end, this Archon-forsaken snowscape has become stained by mortal transgression. You're making assumptions there, sir. As I climb further up the path, the wind becomes stronger, and the temperature plummets to an unbearably low level. I scouted out a ruin to the northeast, where, to my utter astonishment, I found water. It was somehow unfrozen, in defiance of its perennially blizzard-beaten surroundings. From the location, I would estimate that it is linked to the stream I saw further downhill. However, this area is so cold that I could not afford to explore deeper inside the ruin, for the risk of freezing to death or drowning. I left a makeshift sign there to mark a spot. I just hope that it doesn't get buried in the snow. I suppose that once upon a time this could have been an underground shelter, and that over the years the groundwater has seeped in and flooded it. But I've also heard that the tyrants of the distant past were partial to a form of punishment whereby they would jail a prisoner, lock them in a cage, and then slowly pour water in, just so they could force the prisoner to watch an alarm as the water slowly rose up from their ankles to their mouth, nose, and finally their forehead. Such a cruel and drawn-out punishment. And in the sheer cold of this climate, it is all the more impossible to imagine that any managed to survive it. I believe they probably sustained significant frostbite. Further to the east, the road becomes more rugged. I had a stupid accident and very nearly broke my leg because of it. I was lucky to only receive a superficial wound and no major bone injury. But it also tore a great big hole in my windproof clothing, so now I feel the full force of the wind right against my skin. It feels awful, like being stabbed constantly with a sharp knife. Ugh, that's unpleasant. I managed to find shelter from the wind before my wound went completely numb. I just about managed to sew my clothing back up, but there's no way I can continue to the summit like this. I made it back to camp, finally, on the verge of freezing to death. As I warmed my feet by the bonfire, I removed my socks to find that 3 of my toes had turned purple from the cold. But no matter, right now I'm still enjoying the feeling of coming back to life after such a close brush with death. I hope you were able to get circulation flowing back through your toes, sir. When the storm died down a little, I looked up and caught a view of the peak, towering there silently against the dark sky, encircled by giant, jagged rocks, and yet secluded among them in the centre. The bard's songs tell of an ancient, evil dragon who lies buried there in the mountain stream. I wonder if it, too, yearns for the celestial heights, even as it gazes up with rotting and blinded eyes. Many villagers who live at the foot of the mountain liken this monstrous mountain to a blind spot in the eyes of the gods, a place ruled by the inscrutable force of fate. Old Mondstadt fairy tales speak of the mountain as a place of punishment that was abandoned by the wind of time and left for the howling winds to sweep in and freeze everything in its moment of destruction. Yet something still stirs here, at the peak of the mountain. I heard its call in my dream. It was like a gentle song, pleasing to the ear, but somehow disturbing to the mind. This trip was a disaster, but at least I came out of it alive. Farewell for today, Dragonspine. Perhaps I shall return, though I do not know if I will ever make it to your summit. I think I will explore Liyue next, but first things first, my top priority is replenishing my lost supplies. Oh, and while I'm at it, I think I'll swap the soggy old diary for a new one. Well, that explains where one of them went. Volume 10. Ooh, we have progressed to Inazuma. Rito. It's already been a few days since I arrived in Rito, and yet the Kanto Commission still shows no sign of letting me pass. I don't know how long I'll have to stay. I hope Mr. Kuriso will find a way to get me out of here. Mr. Kuriso is a local commerce chairman. Originally from Fontaine, he is a reserved and friendly gentleman, possessing a certain charm that makes other outlanders feel at home. I'd heard that Inazuma didn't welcome travellers, but it wasn't until I set foot in Rito that I realised the severity of the situation. The Sokoku Decree has been in effect for some time. While many travellers have chosen to stay on the island, many come and go, staying for only a brief period. Many merchants also packed up and went home. Rito, in its current state, is a gloomy and depressing place. I'm a little confused though. Was there not a great storm surrounding the islands of Inazuma, so it was exceedingly difficult to get in and out by ship? Yet, he seems to indicate that ships are just coming and going as they please. That seems odd. And he makes no mention of encountering a storm on his way in either. He is an unreliable narrator. It is said that hundreds of years ago, Hiroshi of the Hiragi, sorry, it's a double I, clan built this commercial port. He recruited talented merchants to set up shop here and encouraged free trade. Rito flourished and prospered for some time, but poor Hiroshi would probably turn in his grave if he knew of the state that Rito is in right now, except that Hiroshi wouldn't have been buried, he would have been cremated, but semantics. Still, his descendant, the current Kanjo commissioner, seems to be living the good life. It's enough to leave anyone feeling rather resentful. After a few days, Mr. Krisu brought me some good news. He's heard that the Crux fleet will stop by briefly in Inazuma. There should be a way for this famous armed fleet to smuggle me to another island, he said. I just need to be patient. I don't know if Mr. Kurisu's information is reliable, but it's always a good idea to be prepared. First, I must think of a way to get my camp making and fire starting tools back from Miss Yurika. I will beg if necessary. It seems that the shogunate has attacked another Sangonomiya outpost, inflicting many casualties. Or was it the other way around? The few outlanders who remain have all been gossiping. Even those in the service of the commissioner have been spreading various rumours without fear. It is unclear what has happened, but still more merchants have packed up and gone home. Many military ships have come and gone at the harbour, probably carrying emergency military provisions. Perhaps I can take advantage of the chaos and confusion to retrieve my stuff from the warehouse. Oh, and I must also remind myself not to lose this diary again. There are diaries with covers that are more beautiful and elegant, of course, but that's no excuse for replacing the old with something new. Did he go to Inazuma before or after Liyue? He doesn't really go into detail, so I don't know. Anywho, we come to the final volume of Roald the Adventurer's Diary. And what happened to Roald? Because I don't think we get his end in his diaries. So why did he just stop writing? Must Google this. Volume 11. My exploration of... Actually, I'm going to point out something here. When we're in Liyue, he has the location under the volume, but somewhere along the way he stopped supplying it. It would have been when he hit Inazuma, right? Yeah, I know he's got Rito, but he doesn't have one... He doesn't have one here. I mean, obviously it's Tsurumi Island, but yeah, that's weird. Volume 11. My exploration of Tsurumi Island has not gone smoothly. Earlier, it was thanks to a local youth named Kama that I was able to leave Rito successfully and arrive on Tsurumi Island undetected. At his direction, I tried to penetrate the thick fog that shrouds the island and somehow managed to catch a hurried glimpse of the ancient civilization present here, as well as certain dreamlike landscapes. However, these memories seem to have dispersed just like a mist might. But I can still clearly remember meeting a small child on the supposedly long-dead island. Ah! Yeah, that kid. I don't remember his name, but yeah, that kid. Perhaps it was nothing but a hallucination I saw under the influence of elemental particles floating through the fog. Or perhaps the mushrooms on the island were to blame. No, I promise you, Roald, he's very real. That child may have just been an illusion or a false memory. Actually, was he real in the end? I don't remember how that ended. And this would certainly follow common logic, of course. But the second time I came, I brought a little more food with me in hopes that the child would accept them. It must be hard living on a dead island like this one, I thought. The next time I came ashore, I did not inform Karma. Oh, this is the boat guy. Related to the... Yeah, okay, I know who you're talking about. I did not inform Karma, and thus got lost in the thick fog very quickly. I tried all means and ways, but could not find my way through the fog. It was as if it was rejecting me for unknown reasons. If it were not for the blonde-haired traveller and the little fairy named Paimon, hey, he mentions us! I would probably have had to return empty-handed, but they helped me to pick some local fluorescent fungus, which is rumoured among Inazumans to have coalesced from the memories of the ancient dead of Tsurumi Island, which gave them their phosphorescent ghostly glow. They possess the ability to strengthen the eyes and mind and improve one's memory. Out of curiosity, did we ever come across Roald and Adventurers since he's writing of us? I do not recall doing so. I tried some over the last few days, and these fungi do indeed have the ability to calm the heart and cheer the spirit. It appears to be good for digestion as well. That said, I haven't seen any marked improvement in my memory yet. I must remember to leave a few for my friend in Samaria to conduct research on. Additionally, I found the pictures of the ancient murals that the blonde traveller and Paimon brought to be most fascinating. They are certainly worth further research. That we were able to discover such valuable historical ruins at all is owed to the passion, wisdom, and determination of these two exceptional adventurers. Wow, such praise from Roald, the adventurer. I will humbly accept that, Roald. Yes, I shall. But the question becomes, as I said, one, did we ever meet the gentleman, since he seems to mention us? But two, what happened to Roald? What happened beyond Inazuma? He can't just stop there. I want to know what happened. Roald, where'd you go? Oh. Okay. We must have come across Roald. Just reading from the wiki. Roald would eventually be commissioned by Sumida to obtain a Moshiro and met Ru, that's the kid's name, on Tsurumi Island. However, he didn't know the true extent of the situation of the island, and when he returned to bring the Moshiro back, it had disappeared. After meeting the traveller, he returned to Tsurumi Island and asked the traveller to bring him some fluorescent fungus and take photos of the murals of the island. After returning with them, Roald thanked them and departed from the island, only to unknowingly drop his most recent diary in the process. So we did meet him! So he was, in fact, giving us commentary on something that we did with him. I didn't remember this at all. So, yeah, we actually did meet him. However, I would like to know what happened to him after Inazuma, since we have not encountered him since then, nor re-encountered any of his diaries since then. Amelia, I want more history of Roald. Please give me some more diary entries. Please. Maybe he publishes them. Maybe we go back to the Knights of Favonius or the Adventurers Guild in Mondstadt and just find them. I don't know. I don't care how I find them. I just want more